Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create an app, and this is the interface right here, not this. I don't know what the heck that's one. Again, I think you've probably seen this before, where we make an API call to a web service, and basically put in an abbreviation, and it returns its acronyms, right? So right now it's not working, and we've done this before. And we've done this before using MBBM, but what we didn't do is we didn't use dependency management. Like I've discussed before, dependency management um allows us to write code that is decoupled. And I've already explained what decoupling means, right? That is decoupled and flexible. And one particular reason why you want it to be decoupled is that you want to be able you want it to be testable, right? That means you can swap out one object or method for another, and as long as they both adhere to the same protocol, you know. Now, if that's a little bit confusing to you, the video right before this kind of explains it conceptually. Excuse me, but this is the practical application. So what we want to do is we want to go. I'm going to give us the overview of what's going on, and I have some things already in place, right? So these are our custom errors; they're already in place. We have our URL component constants that build our URL. Of course, this is our mock URL that we're going to use in the test, right? And I'll explain that. This is our JSON parser object. This parses the data. And if you're confused by this, I have a completed project where you can follow along with that. You should be able to download it from GitHub. This is the networking service that we're going to be writing from scratch. This is the protocol that all of this is going to adhere to. And of course, our view controller is empty. I mean, it's not completely empty, right? We have dummy test data there, right? But we're going to actually create it to where it pulls data, right? We have our observable object. All the functionality is there for the observable object. So in this exact instance, we're not going to use a combine. We could have, but I mean, I wasn't really worried about teaching combine. I want you to understand using protocols and dependency management, and understand the advantage of it. Okay, we have our acronym object. This is what we're going to use to create our custom objects when we get our data back and we parse. And of course, our dependency provider. Okay, and I'm going to explain with that, what we do with this as well. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and get busy with the networking service first. And we're going to test it, right? We're going to use this to make the API call. Okay, so let's go. Let's go public function, public func, fetch API response, fetch API response, L. This is going to be of type URL. And of course, we're going to do completion. It's going to be at escaping, right? Of course, wants to return no a void. And we are using a result type in this escaping closure. And the result type will be of type acronym object. and we will return a response error. Okay. Now that we have that, okay, okay, yeah, just making sure. And again, our acronym object is located where? Custom errors. I mean, not that. I mean, our model. This is our model, right? Our response error is our custom errors. Okay. Response error. So these are types of responses, bad responses. Okay. We will use those. Okay. So now I'm going to say we're going to go ahead and do our task. Now, another thing we're going to talk about too as well is we're going to have our how do I put this? Many times you want your dependencies. We're not going to, first of all, we're not going to use a singleton. You don't want to use a singleton. Why? Because a singleton will not allow there's too much of a chance of some if you're doing something somewhere else in the code for that to interfere with the unit test. The unit, that's why the unit test has tear down and setup, because you only want one instance and you want that instance in isolation for testing, right? But when you have some type of global variable that can be used throughout the app at one time, and it's only one instance, and it can be used simultaneously, maybe in other places, that leads to the opportunity for your test results to become skewed. Okay, so we're not going to use a singleton, all right? And in general, I'm going to say something else, but we're not going to worry about that right now. I personally prefer to pass all of my everything to be a dependency. So right now we only have one dependency, the URL, but you can make your URL session.shared a dependency as well. But I'm not going to do that right now. Let's go ahead and get down to brass tacks. Task equal RL session dot shared dot data task with URL right? Okay. This is data. Okay. Response. Okay. Error. Okay. Now I'm going to say we're going to have a guard. We're going to check to see if we have data. Guard, let data equal data else. Okay, we check to see return, right? Then completion, right? Dot failure dot no data. Okay. So if we don't have any data, we're going to return this error. Okay. And now we're going to check, make sure our status code is appropriate. That means it's within 200 and 300. Okay. So how you check your get access to your status code, you're going to say guard let response equal response as the optional HTTP URL response. Okay. And I'm going to say between 200, 1, 2, 3, and 300, right? Tilde equals response dot status code. Okay. Else return and completion, right? Dot failure dot bad response. Okay, so now we have this. So now we've checked whether this works, right? Now we're going to, what I want to do is I want to print my data. We're going to do this and we're just going to see if we have our data, right? So I'm just going to say, right, I'm going to say my data because I tested, I go along a little bit, right? Data. Okay. And we're going to make a call. We're just going to jimmy rig it for a little bit. You know, I'm going to call this in the view controller just for a simple quick test, make sure the data is getting there, but then we're going to pull it back out. And when it's all done, we're going to test the, officially using our XC unit test. So now I'm going to check for an error, right? Guard, right? I want my error to equal nil, else, right? Return, and I'm going to say, if there is an error, completion dot failure dot, I'm just going to use bad response right now. Okay. So now that that I have this, now that I know that I have my data, I've checked my data, right? Actually, I'm gonna check it down here to make sure that I'm getting it instead of checking it there. Stop. For some reason, Xcode is very fidgety these days. So now I'm gonna call my parser, right? I created the parser. Remember the JSON parser here, right? Right? This object. So now I'm going to use it in my let parser equal JSON parser, and that's the object. Now, of course, since you have to have a generic value, we discussed generics. If you checked out some of my other video, you will understand this. I need this to parse an acronym object, right? Okay, so now parser dot parse data, and of course it will parse this data, right? And of course I'm going to say res. Right, that's I want to see the results, right? Let's see something. So now let's scroll up. Now that I have this, and something, I'm gonna go ahead and increase this. Okay, now that I have this, I'm going to say, we'll say switch, right? Res, right? Case dot failure. And I don't want, the for in this situation, I don't really want the value. I'm just gonna put in a dummy value dot failure response error dot no data, right? So, and then case dot success, right? And I'm going to say let object, right? Object, which is the acronym object, right? Let object, and completion is going to be dot success obj. right? So we've done all this, 1, 2, 3 down here. On the outside of this task, we'll say task dot resume. Okay, so now let's see if we can get some data back. And we can do this by creating, we'll go to our main view controller and we'll just on right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use our test, our dummy test URL just to see if we get data back, right? So networking service dot fetch API. Hold up, let me see. Fetch API response. Give me a second, real quick. Okay, let me I have this wrong, right? What we gotta say is we gotta do this. Let networking networking service equal networking service, right? Oh Jesus, stop. Right now we say networking service dot fetch dot, and we're going to say we're going to make this test constants dot ax URL. And right here, we're going to go here, return results, and we should be able to say, give me a second real quick. So oh, by the way, this should be a URL type, right? Let